we had we had the one, the Jesus Our Firm Foundation, and then following that we had the Stones last Wednesday evening, and then tonight we're going to talk about the house of God, and we'll kick off with that God Himself spoke to Moses, and He wanted to be amongst His people. And therefore he commanded Moses to build for him a tabernacle. And the reason why it was a tabernacle, not a permanent structure, because they were at this moment, you can say they were nomads. They were moving along. They were moving from Egypt, the house of slavery, to the promised land. And on that journey, many things happened. But it was this time in Exodus chapter 25, verses 8 to 9. Jesus spoke to Moses, say, have the people of Israel me a holy sanctuary so I can live among them. So it was God's desire to live amongst his people. Verse 9, you must build this tabernacle and its furnishings exactly according to the pattern I will show you. So Moses was given this instruction, and if we go turn our Bible to Exodus chapter 25, we will find there that he was given how to construct the tabernacle, which is a tent, and then the outer dimensions or the fencing, all that dimension. This is the inner court, this is the outer court. There was also the dimensions for the altar. There was the dimension how they should build the Ark of the Covenant. And this is the lampstand, which God gave them instructions how to build the lampstand, and also the table of showbread. This is all the things which God commanded Moses, all the manner how he should build it. And so one can, from here, we can see that, there's a saying which they say, if the mountain don't want to come to Muhammad, then Muhammad will go to the mountain. I don't know that same saying out there in the USA, but we are living here amongst the Muslims, and so we sort of know their sayings and so on, go to school even while we went to school with the Muslims and so on. So I know, picked up that saying that it's always say, the mountain don't want to come to Muhammad, Muhammad will go to the mountain. Now I'm looking at this and I'm asking myself, is God now saying the people don't want to come to me, so I will go to the people? The other thing, what I also noticed, people want tangible, they want to see, they want to taste, they want to feel, they want to know the presence of God is amongst them or with them. I think it is in Colossians, which Paul are writing something about that we must not be deceived, because all those things is just to please the flesh and not the spiritual things. So, in a manner, God wanted the children of Israel to know in the mornings when they wake up, then they see the tent of meeting and the tabernacle, and they would now be pleased that God is amongst them. Now, many years later, there arose a man by the name of David, and we all know the history of David, the shepherd boy, and Samuel anointed him as the next king after disobedient King Saul. And when David became now the next king, he was very successful because he was true to the heart of God, or well, they say a man after God's own heart. And so David then became so successful, it says that he now rested from all his enemies. If we read here in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 1 and 2, after the king was settled in his palace, God had given him rest from all his enemies around him. He said to Nathan the prophet, here I am, living in a house of cedar. Now, that is the wood that they get there from Lebanon. It's a very expensive wood, if I have to put it like that. So the cedars of, I think even this cedars tree is the emblem of Lebanon. I think it's even embossed on their flag. And so he says, I've got living in a very nice house. Oh, the house is all paneled with cedar, while the ark of God remains in a tent. Okay, so we have now the version here, a better version of the tent, the tabernacle, as it is amongst the people. And he's looking at this and he describes this as a tent. And he's living in a dwelling, a very nice king palace house. And he felt, no, this should not be, it should be turned around, that God must have everything of the best and he must be secondary. So just give him that. So he felt we must make a plan. And so he spoke to Nathan about this, and he says, I want to build a house for the Lord. Should not be a tent. He must stay in something worthwhile. So to say, also a palace. Now Nathan came to him. You can see here at the bottom is God's words through Nathan to King David. And this is the message which Nathan brought to David. When your days are fulfilled and you rest with your fathers, and when he passed from this life, I will set up your seed after you. So one will be born from his loins, who will come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. So God is not dropping them as he was with David. He will also be with his son. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Now, this is a two-pointed answer here. So, number one, David, you're going to come to the end of your days. Thank you for having the idea that you want to build me a house, but it's not going to be from you. We do understand that the point was that he has too much blood on his hand, though he was in the service of God, but God has blessed him in this. There will always be one on his throne. And that's why I say this has got about Solomon. I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever, or David's throne forever. But it also has a reference to Christ the King, that David was the forerunner for Christ the King, that will sit on the throne of David forever and ever. So it was not up to David, though his heart longing was in it. God said, no, your son will build for me my house. Remember, we're talking about the house of the Lord. And so we go, this is now in 2 Samuel, and so we continue here in verses 14 and 15. God speaking still to David and Nathan. I will be a father to him. There's no God will be a father to Solomon. Shall be a son to me. When he commits iniquity or when he commits sin, I will punish him with a rod such as mortals use, like we people, with blows inflicted by human beings, but I will not take my steadfast love from him. It continue, in other words, to establish the throne of his kingdom forever. God will continually be alongside the kingdom of David, the kingdom of Solomon, which eventually became Judah. So this is the answer which David received from Nathan, from God. If we read further on in 2 Samuel chapter 7, we can feel that David's heart was not so happy. And eventually he said, well, at least I'm soothed, or I'm glad for this, that the throne is going to be always in my family. So we can see in 2 Samuel 7 and verses 16, seems like it, your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. That is now confirmation to David. This is not just something that I'm sucking out of my thumb. This is forever grafted in heaven. And then this is now King Solomon. He is now, remember now, that is now Samuel. I think First Samuel is all about Saul, King Saul. Second Samuel is all about King David. And First Kings is all about Solomon. You know that because of the wars waged against my father David from all sides, he could not build a temple for the name of the Lord, his God, until the Lord put his enemies under his feet. Now, this is now Solomon, I think he's speaking to Hiram, also a great friend of, of David, telling him, my father could not build the temple because he was always busy with wars, but I am now resting from my enemies. But now the Lord my God has given me rest, just like when David also had the upper hand over all his enemies. Then he felt, I've got time on my hands, so I want to build a house for the Lord. But it was not given to him or granted to him, but now it was granted to his son. And this son is now saying that he's also having rest on every side, and there is no adversary or desire. There's nothing hindering me now to do what I need to do. God's house is waiting. And then here in 1 Kings 6 and 1, in the 480th year after the Israelites had come out of Egypt, it's now 500 years later since being slaves in Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, he began to build the temple of the Lord, or the house of God. So it's now going to be built. All right, so we can now say that the temple is built, it is there. And so now so this was introduction, was just to say where the idea comes from building a house for the Lord. From Moses building the tabernacle to David that says, no, he can't be in a tent. He must be in something better than my own house. And it was not granted him, and it went over to his son. So we can now say this is all being completed. The temple is there as an not a monument. All right, say the temple is there, and the children of Israel knows that God is in the temple, and God ruleth over them. And so, for the temple also had its rules and regulations. I mean, we even on last Sunday morning when we spoke about Nehemiah, when the prophet said he had to go to the temple to shelter from his enemies, uh, Nehemiah knew that is wrong. There's rules and regulations apply to the temple. You don't just waltz in there as rules and regulations. Oh, sorry. I saw something down my screen here. All right. So this verse tells us now, after the temple is there, behold, bless you, ye the Lord, all you servants of the Lord, which by night stand in the house of the Lord. Now, my point is, we're going to have some verses that speaks about the house of the Lord, seeing that I have to talk about that tonight. So this verse tells us God needs to be blessed. His servants are the recipients, all you servants of the Lord. But what stands out here is which by night stand in the house of the Lord. And that caught my attention. Then also verse 2, lift up your hands in the sanctuary. Sanctuary is another word for the dwelling place of God or the house of the Lord or the temple. And lift up your hands in the sanctuary and bless the Lord. Let's just say thank you, God, for all your grace and for your mercy. Verse 3, the Lord that made heaven and earth bless thee out of Zion. And there we have that name again, Zion. And this I have reference to the Temple Mount, to the temple that is on the mount, to the city of Jerusalem. And as I said, I was interested in this, which by night stand in the house of the Lord. One would think at night they would be sleeping, but it seems like the praise for the Lord continues, not just during the day, but even by night. And I read here in Isaiah 30, sorry, where am I now? Okay, I just touched something. It says in Isaiah 30, verse 29, you shall have a song as in the night when a holy solemnity is kept. Now, that's just another word for a festival or a feast is kept. And gladness of heart as when one goeth with a pipe or with a flute to come into the mountain of the Lord. And so the temple is even called the mountain of the Lord, to the mighty one of Israel. So what did we find there is when there's a festival, they come up with a song. Remember this also in Psalm 134, Psalm degrees. I was just now, I think it's Psalm 122 and 122, it starts till 134. This is the last of the songs of accent. In other words, these psalms are all can be sung. So the Isaiah is saying here, you shall have a song as in the night when a holy solemnity is kept. Solemnity is kept. And gladness of heart, especially when you go to the temple, you can't go sad and so. It is glad. All right, when you sing, it's about gladness of heart, as when one goeth with a flute or a pipe to come into the mountain or to the house of the Lord, to the mighty one. Now it is said, as it is said, there must be a feast or what is a feast or a festival, and so they are joyful in heart. And usually this can be before the Passover. The Passover is one of the first and foremost festivities of the Jewish people. And remember, it starts already the evening before the Sabbath, when the sun, we would say, when the sun goes down on a Friday evening, they are in prepared mode. And so they are joyful that this Passover has arisen, and so they have this festivity through the night, or as long as, remember, sometimes it's 7 days that they have festivities. And so it is a joyful, great occasion that they would, even at night time, when the call is there, they respond to it, as we read here in Psalm 134, by which the night stand in the house of the Lord. They are there to bless. They will bless each other. They receive even their blessings from God. Also, this seems like a bit rude, if one has to say this. As you enter the house of God, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. Doesn't it sound a bit crude? But if we go read Ecclesiastes 5 and verse 1, then we get the understanding of what it is said. It said here, it is better to listen than to offer foolish sacrifices without even knowing you are doing wrong. It is evil to make mindless offering to God. And that is why the caption is here, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. If I read in the New American Standard, it says, guard your steps as you go to the house of God, and draw near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know they are doing evil. So there is rules and regulations when you get to the temple, and you may just remember the sons of Aaron, Nadab and Abihu. I think it's in the book of Numbers 10, if I'm not mistaken. The Bible said there that they brought strange fires before in the temple, and then God punished them for doing. Everybody could say this is something good that they were doing, but God punished them with death because they were not. There is a time to bring the fire before the Lord, but there's also time not to bring it before the Lord. And so you do not use your own manners. No, you got to be obedient to the calling of the regulations of the temple. So, Paul was writing in 1 Corinthians 14:26. What then, brothers? When you come together, each one has a hymn, a lesson, a revelation, a tongue, or an interpretation. Let all things be done for building up. Or some Bibles say, let all things be done for edification, or for learning, or for teaching, or for instructing, so that we can be wise. We receive wisdom when we come together. And later on, and I think it's verses 33 of chapter 14, Paul would say, God is a God of order. So, what then, brothers, when you come to each one, now just imagine there's 20 brothers in the church, or 40 or 50. Each one of them have a hymn. My hymn, my hymn, my hymn. Or each one have a, now it's my turn today. And they, well, as we want everybody to be partakers in the service, it should be done in an orderly manner. Otherwise, we'll have to keep our eyes open and shut our mouths. So let us do things orderly in the church today. You don't come, one comes with a hymn, one comes with a lesson, one comes with a revelation, one have a tongue or speaking in a tongue or whatever, or an interpretation. Everything has to be done for edification's sake. So there's rules and regulations in the house of the Lord. Now here it says, and many, Isaiah 2 verses 3, and many people shall go and say, come you, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. Once again, we notice here it is referred to the mountain of the Lord. Remember that the temple is built on top of Mount Moriah, or later on it was said Mount Zion, but the mountain of the Lord and the house of the God of Jacob. Every time when it says house of Jacob, of Isaac or Abram, it's just to identify that we are on the same level. Remember, there's many gods at the time of I try to get now to the prophet that with the 400 Baal prophets. I'm trying to get now to his name. There were two of them. It slipped me now, but there were many.
Elijah and Elisha.
Elijah. Thank you, my dear sister. Getting old, I'm missing out on some of the names. All right, so we
Join the
need
club.
we need to identify the God. That's why the Israelites prayed to the God of Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. And so that they can be sure they're not just praying to any God. Like there was 400 with Elijah, and they put them to the test, and they were found to be wanting. They couldn't bring fire from heaven, whereas when Elijah had to do it, he says, bring the water, throw it over everything. They must not come and tell me somehow there was some fire in this altar. And therefore, the sacrifice and the altar was consumed. That fire from God. Now, who's got the God? And so the prophets of Baal had to run because it was demonstrated there's only but one God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But I want to come back to this, and many people shall go and say, come you and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord or to the house of the God. Many people. That is a description that all people, not just the Jews, because remember Isaiah was the prophet, they call him the messianic prophet, and he was prophesying how it will be in the messianic kingdom. It will not be the same as the kingdom that was of David. This time it would be different. All people will come to the mountain of the Lord. All people will come to the house of the God of Jacob. Isaiah 56 and 7, even them will I bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. The burnt offerings and the sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar, for mine house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. You see, not just for the Jewish nation, but it's all have reference. Remember, we said that God promised David that his kingdom will have no end, and Christ inherited that kingdom. And because he died on the cross of Calvary, he died for all people. And so his house will be called the house of prayer for all people. That is David's beloved psalm, sure, Psalm 23, verses 6, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Is that my wish? Is that your wish? Would you want to dwell all the days of your life in the house of the Lord? The invitation is there. It stands for every one of us. In the Psalm 27, verses 4, one thing I ask from the Lord, this do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. What beautiful words as the psalm is not describing. One thing, can we read that tonight? Each one of us say, one thing I ask from the Lord, that only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple, in his house. In Psalm 84, verses 10, we find, for a day in your courts is better than 1,000. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. So the psalmist here, look, I just said now a while ago that one needs to, when he goes to the temple, he can't just nilly-willy walk into the temple. And I take it that I have not read about it. I meant to study it further. But I, for myself, felt if there is, people need to be prevented from harming themselves, if I must put it, if there's no one to guard the place. So I felt this is God, that there is a doorkeeper at the temple, that once you approach the temple, there is one that asks you, what is your reason for coming? Now, I just want to come and look. No, it's not for coming to look. You must have a God-given purpose, something that will not strike you dead. So the psalmist here say he would rather be for a day in the courts is better than 1,000. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God. They're sitting there by the temple, seeing that there's order in the temple, than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. So where does your heart lies? And we can most surely see where the heart lies of the psalmist here. He wants to be part and parcel of godliness. And then here in Psalm 122 and verses 1, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And it is said here that David is the 10th generation. If you are born out of wedlock, if I have to put it like that, and then you was one of those that could not go into the temple. And once again, that is why you had the doorkeeper. And so David could not go into, he could be in the outer court of the temple, although he was very much concerned about the tabernacle, and so he did not trespass that. It was given to him, and he was knowledgeable about it, and that would we understand. He was the 10th generation from Perez. And remember that Perez was, I think it was a twins that was born. It was Judah, the son of Jacob, that met this, so to say, prostitute at the gates and used her. And from that union was born Perez. And although it was actually Judah's daughter-in-law, because he did not apply the rules and the regulations that once the son dies without um, fathering a son, then the other brother must, but the other brother was bad, and so God punished him also. And the third son, Judah said, "No, he's too young, and this woman is too old." So makes no difference. He could have fathered maybe a child by that woman, and so that the law can be fulfilled. But then he was tricked into it. But out of that was born, I'm sure it was a twins. I'm sure that the twins was there that they had to put the red string on the one's hand or feet, something like that. But Perez, and if you count Matthew chapter 1, if you count from Perez to David, you see he's the 10th generation. And that is why I said, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Well, he must have been so glad that now he's got legal. He can get into the house of the Lord. Many nations will come and say, come and let's go onto the mountain of the Lord and to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us about his ways and that we may walk in his path. For from Zion will go forth the law, even the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. That is now Micah sounding. The other one went from, I think it was Isaiah. Many nations, it's not many people. This is again many nations. It is not just a Jewish nation, but again, this has got reference to that all will come to the house of the Lord. And as it says, and that he may teach us about his ways, and that we may walk in his path. If we are taught, we will walk correctly. For from Zion will go forth the law, even the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Remember, Jesus was crucified there. And so from there, the law will go forth. This here is just that, I'm just the impression that it is carved in stone. All nations will come to the Lord. I think this is my last. As it is written in the scriptures, they will all be taught by God. Okay, we read there by Micah, the God will be the teacher. We will all be taught by God. And then your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you. You are not your own. You are bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body. 1 Corinthians 6:19-20. So God does not live, to compare this, I think this is the last. The Most High in Acts 7:48, the Most High does not dwell in houses made by human hands. This is Stephen on the day when he was preaching, and the Jews felt very discomfort about his words, because he was talking about all people, all nations. But the Jewish hierarchy said only the Jews. And therefore, he paid the price, because he said, the Most High does not dwell in houses made by human hands. And also, the Apostle Paul, again, when he was preaching on in Corinth, I think it's Corinth or Athens, one of the two, God, when he was talking to them about the unknown God, that God made the world and all the things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwells not in the temples made with hands. And so, again, this evening, I've been teaching from the tabernacle to the temple. Temple was destroyed, and another one was built up in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. Eventually, Herod took it upon himself to please the Jews. He built another temple over that one. But God does not live. That's why Jesus said, and they said, isn't this lovely buildings? Jesus said there was not going to be one stone left upon one of the other. It will all be broken down. Why? Today, God lives in temples not made by human hands. His house, the house of the Lord, is me, it's you. Does He live in you? I pray the Lord that we will take care of this house so that it will always be available for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob through Jesus Christ, our. And the Lord bless you as we finish this one on the house of God. We just stop sharing. All right. Over to you, Theo.
Thank you so very much, Brother Stephen. We've actually just had some friends that is renting their place out to tenants, and we had the, I wouldn't say privilege, but when you're friends, you don't have a choice. You go and you help prepare the place because new tenants are moving in. And I guess, it's a good spiritual analogy to make. If God is going to come and live inside of us, it's good to clear out all the things that is not needed, all the junk, all the not good things. And when God lives inside of us, you want it to be in a certain condition. And I guess it's the blessing that we have, that we can welcome God in. And you're right, I love the way that you ended that study off, that we are, the house now, and really do appreciate your encouragement, the preparation, and the insight that you have given. Like I said, when we started, it's fuel for us for the rest of the week. We know that fuel is expensive these days. It went up again. But we appreciate so much that, we can just receive this fuel again. Our lamps have been topped up with oil, and now we go on again, so we appreciate that. I don't know if there is any other comments, Brother Jimmy. I know you always have something. Yes, sir. There you go. Go ahead.
About that, I didn't know I was unmuted. I didn't mean to laugh at you. I was laughing with you because, yeah, I'm a
All
loud
good,
mouth.
brother.
Uncle Stephen, we just got done studying Exodus over here on Wednesday evenings, and that was some of the most interesting study that I've ever had or led or been a part of. Was that part of Exodus about the tabernacle? A lot of people talk about it being boring, but to me, I see it as a description of me, a description of how I'm supposed to structure myself to be the tabernacle so that the inner sanctum where God lives can be righteous and set apart for him to set up shop inside of me, you know? And so
Mm,
I really appreciate. I'm not sure you know how much it means for someone who is as faithful and as strong as you to for us to be able to hear from you about the truth of the old and the new and how it comes together and how it applies to us and why God gave us those instructions so that we know how to live for him. Thank you, Uncle Stephen. That was awesome.
much appreciated, Brother Jimmy.
Thank you so much, Brother Jimmy. Uh, any other comments? If not, we are going to have our closing hymn.